Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Zero to Empire podcast. I have Brett Hill here, and he is the Mindful Coach. And so, what actually inspired you to start the Mindful Coach and the Mindful Coach Association, and how do they actually complement each other?
Oh wow, that's a great question. I started the mindful coach because I believe passionately that mindfulness and presence in our interactions with each other in the world is what helps people. It's like the lowest hanging fruit in a way for like how to radically improve the quality of your life, your relationships, your professional career, like all the things that you do with a special emphasis on mindful communication because that's where my passion is. Because I feel like how much how much do we depend on our communications to get anything done, right? It's kind of like you can never do anything better than you can communicate about it, particularly since, unless you're just doing it yourself. But the big projects like building buildings and solving, healthcare crisis and like how to create a business, you have to be able to communicate well. And so even if you're really good, if you can't communicate well, you can't do much. And so I felt like, where in the world do people go to learn how to do that? And there's not that much. People don't focus on it. And it's been so powerful in my life that it's, up leveling every professional conversation I ever had and personal conversations. And it's helped me so much. I felt like this has got to get out there more. So I decided to do the mindful coach. And in the process, I wound up talking to a lot of coaches. And I found out that by doing that, there's just so much good work going on in the world of helping other people. And that sometimes the people who are in the coaching business, they kind of feel like they're alone in the world. Like, I'm just one person trying to help all these people, and often the coaches are called into a mission, like they want to help the LGBTQ plus community, or they want to help in disadvantaged communities, or they want to help with neurodivergent individuals who are struggling to kind of feel like they belong in the world, or women who are struggling in business. They all have some calling, and they're doing amazing work with people, but you never hear about it. And so I thought, oh my God, these people are all alone. They feel like they're all alone. So I'm going to create that. So I created the Mindful Coach Association, which any coach can go to, or professionals. You don't even have to be a coach, but you could be like as long as you use your voice to help people. Join the Mindful Coach Association free. And we have these meetings, and I can have you on my podcast, the Mindful Coach podcast, because I felt like people need to hear about this incredible work that people are doing, because there's a lot of it. And so that's the main reason I built both the Mindful Coach and the Mindful Coach Association, and how they kind of synergize each other. Oops, I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. So,
That's okay.
that's great to hear that you're doing that for people. That's awesome. And what actually, we talked about before this call that you actually came from a tech background, more tech
Yeah.
focused. So, what actually changed and made you inspire this shift?
Well, technical career is great. I had a really great career. I really enjoyed working at Microsoft and Riverbed, which is a network appliance company, and other businesses in technology. I had my own business teaching Fortune 500 companies how to secure their web servers. So I was pretty deep in there. I used technologically, but at some point or another, I felt like the human interaction component is the piece that was missing the most for me. And in the meantime, I've been doing technical work in the background. I've been doing all this mindful work, mindful communication, somatic mindfulness coaching training, and it was helping me so much in my career. And I decided at one point, I'm just going to pivot to actually just doing the interpersonal work and let someone else do the tech, because I had done it for so long, and I kind of felt like, okay, it's time for me to do something else, because I'm going to wind up, I'm already, at the end stages of a technical career because of my age. And so it's like, okay, let somebody else do that. And I'm going to focus on helping people be better people.
That's awesome. So, what kind of lessons did you actually take from your time at Microsoft that influenced your current businesses?
Well, the Oh, boy, that's a huge question because there's so much. When you work in a really big company like Microsoft or Amazon or some of these other big tech companies, Dell or whatever you're working at, and you get a perspective on how they do business that you just can't get any other way. And it's really incredible to be a part of these larger organizations because the projects that they do are so big in scope and they have so many moving parts, and you have a piece of that. And so it's really interesting to learn how all that integrates in a reasonably coordinated way. Just kind of under the hood, for example, if you think about something people don't think about, is like, how do you create an operating system? How do you actually produce the bits that drives millions of computers in such a way that every time you do it, they all don't go crashing, right? Because that would be a huge, huge deal. And they do have problems, no question about it, but from time to time. But in terms of like, how do you actually organize that around tens of thousands of people worldwide? Those are very difficult questions to answer and very difficult, very interesting things to study. And in that process, there's a great deal of communication. So there's a lot of meetings, there's a lot of heated discussions, there's a lot of decisions about doing things. For example, I was in a meeting once with the web server team at Microsoft, and they were talking about moving some of the user interface things around, and they were going to eliminate some of the features. And I've always been a super big advocate for the customer. I'm always thinking from their point of view. And I do the same thing with my work and coaching. I've got the client's point of view. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes. And I thought, well, wait a second. We've had all this training, and here's the UI, and people have policies and procedures. And if you just go and you start moving these pieces around, that's going to cause a fair amount of disruption in the market because people are going to go, oh, well, what happened to these features? I used to know how to do this. I don't know how to do it anymore. And then that causes people to go, I don't feel comfortable using this product that I used to feel comfortable with. And if you don't address that, then you induce uncertainty and uncomfortableness with the very product you're trying to get people to adopt. And so when I said that, everybody looked at me in the room like I was a crazy person. Because I was like, I'm looking out for the way it feels when you open up a page and you've looked at that page 1,000 times and suddenly that page is completely different and you didn't know that was going to happen. What are you going to do? You're going to go, I don't know what to do. I used to feel like I knew what I was doing here. Now I don't know. That has a bearing on your relationship to the product. So I had to explain myself, and I didn't get very far with that conversation in that room at that time. But I did walk away from that meeting realizing that I'm in touch with something that most of these engineers are not. And that was a valuable lesson for me, which helped me to pivot somewhat to be more focused on customer-facing content. And from then on out, I was basically doing lectures to people across the world about how to, conferences and stuff and demos. So that was a ton of fun. And so, but it was strictly a communications thing that I learned about that.
That's awesome that you're focusing on the customer because that's definitely key. And that's surprising that Amazon was doing that at the time you were there at that meeting. So that's one
Well, that
crazy
was
story.
Microsoft, yeah, yeah,
Oh, Microsoft, yeah.
yeah, because yeah. So, well, it's a routine thing to revamp your user interface and to refine a product. And this was just one aspect of a more complicated product, right? So this is like most people don't even know that Microsoft operating systems come with a web server, and those that do, then you really drill into it a lot. It's sort of like, yeah. So it's a small window in a small window on a giant skyscraper of windows.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's the unique value proposition of your mindful communication training and how has it actually impacted your clients' careers?
Well, yeah, thank you for asking that. The communications training, which is really where my heart and soul is so key because there's two big parts of that. And the key thing is that if you can improve the way you show up and the way you communicate to people, then you can really advance your impact as a leader or as a professional, people are going to start listening to you. There's this thing I call attributed authority. It's like people just feel like that you know what you're talking about, and they listen to you more. And so there's two parts to that. One is what you say. Another part is how do you show up? Like, do you walk into the room like, oh man, I'm so nervous and I don't know if I should say anything? Or do you walk in going, yeah, I know what I have to say is valuable and it needs to be heard. Two different points of view that impact tremendously the way that you speak and has a bearing on the way that you're heard. So there's a big part of this training that's skill based, like what do you actually do and say? And the other part of it, which is where most people don't get to in communications training, is the state of being that you're in when you say things makes all the difference in how you come across. So when you do that, like I had one client who said he'd been working at this place for like 10 years and not once had someone from management come and asked him his opinion on things. And after taking the training, they started to come around and ask him, say, what do you think about this? Because they felt a shift in his presence. And so as a result of that, he was being included in conversations he wasn't included in before. It was a really big shift. I had another client who their problem was that they were really reactive, so somebody would say something and be a little critical and he would just go off. He'd go, well, da, 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 and then, and you can't, and what, and it's not the best place to be whenever you're trying to be in a professional relationship with someone. And so people were pretty critical of him and he was struggling with, his career path. And through some of the work that we did, he got to dial all that down. And we developed some shorthand language for him, like the plane isn't crashing. It's like someone says something to him, and in his nervous system, it was, oh my God, the plane's crashing, it's all out of control, I have to course correct. And we worked on taking a breath, really hearing, and then saying things to him like the plane isn't crashing. And he began to be able to respond more effectively, and that resulted in a professional career path for him where he was working. So there's been a few of those kinds of things.
That's very important. Like, that's awesome. You're able to do such a great impact on that man. And his career has definitely changed ever since due to your training. So that's awesome to hear. And so looking back at your career, what's one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
One piece of advice for myself? Let's see. Did I hear that right? It was a piece of advice
Yes.
to myself. Oh, wow. It would be to trust my instincts. It's kind of like one of the things. Now, this, might not be the same advice I give other people, but the way that I'm particularly wired, like if I have a superpower, it's vibing into other people. It's like really kind of sussing out like, oh, what's it like for them to be who they are? And there's a way I've kind of known things about people that turned out to be true that I didn't really lean into, and that there wound up being a cost to that. And mostly this is around being suspicious if you could trust people or not, and having a sense that you might not want to put all your eggs in this basket, but you don't really have a objective reason not to. It's just sort of a feeling-based reason. And so there's this part of you that goes, well, that's silly. You should just do it because checks all the boxes. But then it turned out to be a really bad idea. And so had I trusted my instincts a little bit more, then I would be in a better position today than I am. I've had some pretty significant losses because of people who basically ripped me off and did not follow through with promises made in professional context.
Yeah, that's unfortunate you had to go through that. People definitely need to
Yeah.
live up to their word. So I'm sorry you had to go with that, but it's definitely built you to build these businesses. So it's like kind of like the domino effect. So what's your vision for scaling your business in the next coming years?
Well, that's top of mind for me right now. I'm starting this mindful communications course, which is mindful presence and communications for professionals. And my vision is to create what I call a hybrid class. And that's what it's basically evergreen, because traditionally in coaching, you're either doing one-on-one sessions or you're doing cohort-based offerings where you like have a start date and you do 8 weeks and you have an end date, and you're always recruiting from this beginning to the end. So I'm creating this hybrid model that's always good. So someone can come into this 8 week experience and it doesn't have a start date. They can start at any time. So you basically just kind of jump on the train, and then you can walk through the cars, and the thing just keeps moving. So people are at different stages all the way along, and so I'm building that out as we speak, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a ton of fun. It's going to really be really super powerful class for people.
Oh, I bet. And I can't wait to see it and how many lives it actually changes.
Oh, well,
So,
thank you.
what, yeah, no problem. And what has been actually the biggest challenge you face currently in running multiple businesses, and how do you balance your focus?
Well, that's the bottom line question right there. It's like I'm balancing my focus. I'm a little ADD, and so it's kind of balancing my focus becomes really the crucial part of my effectiveness. And so, what I do is I use a lot of technology to kind of help optimize my workflows as much as I can. So, like yesterday at 10 p or at like 3 p.m., I finished an hour-long podcast, which I had published to like all of my platforms by like 7 p.m. So I can take the whole podcast end to end, produce it, get it published, get it out there with all the stuff. I've got all that completely automated because I'm a technical guy, so I love the automations. It's like it's cool for me to take like the podcast's transcript, throw it into AI, and say, "Hey, come back with a description," and then I take that, tweak it, post it, and I'm done. And then the same thing with all the other aspects of it. So automation is a big part, but to keep the things in focus, I have to kind of really pay attention to what needs to be done today, and what is going to move the needle on the most important thing right now, which is getting my class together and get that offer out there. It's in a pilot phase right now, so I am taking people on a pilot basis, but that's going to switch over to the regular program here pretty soon. So I have a lot of content to produce, and just getting that done. Just day to day, I need to produce this. I've got a list of like 3 things I have to do every day, and I got to do those things and not get distracted by the shiny new object that comes around.
Yeah, staying focused is definitely key. And also, that's great that you're using all these different tools out there because there's a lot of tools that can make your life a whole lot easier, especially
Yeah,
this year alone. So, or last few years actually. But
yeah. And and discovering what ChatGPT can do has been a big productivity tool for me, because while it can't write for me because of my, the writing that I do, it doesn't know what I know. It's like ChatGPT is great for taking content that's known and talking about it, but it doesn't know what I know, so it can't come up with my. So I took my whole book, which I haven't published yet, put it in there, and said, "What are the techniques that I use?" And it'll spit them out. It's like, oh my God, that's incredible! There's a list of all the 15 techniques that are in the draft of this book, and now I can take those and isolate them down. So using it intelligently has been a real game changer for me.
yeah, 100%. It's a very useful tool if you know how to use it correctly. And maybe more people should know how to use it more because it'd be changing their lives, honestly.
Oh yeah,
So,
it's a big deal.
for sure. And I appreciate you being on the podcast, Brett. It's been a great speaking or conversation with you. Where can people reach out to you, or they can just go to their website, wherever you would like for them to
Yeah,
go?
themindfulcoach.com, super easy. Just you can either Google the Mindful Coach or you can Google Brett Hill. At themindfulcoach.com, you can find my blog post, my podcast, and a link to the mindful communications course that I'm offering there. So that, and jump off points for that. Also have a YouTube channel called the Mindful Coach Podcast, and check it all out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Go check him out and go check out all of his resources. A lot of help, and it's changed a lot of lives. And for everyone watching, just thank you for being on the or watching or listening in if you are doing that. And yeah, see you guys all in the next episode of Zero to Empire.